as the sun shining in the morning and the grass being green outside on your lawn. But this was Vince McMahon's experiment. He has been waiting patiently to anoint Roman Reigns as the chosen one. It seemed to be a foregone conclusion going into the show that we would, in fact, have a new Universal Champion. It was just a matter of how. It was a matter of, is Paul Heyman going to turn on Lesnar? And I've said before, I don't want Paul Heyman to ever turn on Brock Lesnar. I said this in a mailbag question once. He should never, ever turn on Brock Lesnar. I don't care if Brock leaves and goes back to UFC. That's fine. Brock can leave. Doesn't mean that Heyman has to split from him. Doesn't prevent Heyman from being used to represent other people. That's a pairing that they broke up once prematurely, and it was a mistake then. It would be a mistake now. Because Brock, even if he leaves, you know he's coming back. It may be a year from now, 2 years from now, but he will be back. And if he comes back, he needs Heyman with him. And I'd rather not have them in a position where they have to explain away yet again how they're back together. So the two of them should never split. But the question wasn't so much who's winning, it's how. That was really the question coming out of this match. So they decided to throw us a little bit of a curveball. They decided to go ahead and everybody thinks they know what's going to happen. I'll show them. And they swerved everybody. And they had Brock Lesnar go in there after a year as Universal Champion and beat Roman Reigns, pinned him clean in the middle of the ring with one Well, let me preface this by saying he hit multiple F5s throughout this match, but he hit one final F5 to retain the championship. Now, let's back up a second here. The match itself. Roman Reigns booed, as you would expect. Brock Lesnar, too, booed by a good portion of, not the whole crowd, but a good portion of the crowd. And right from the get-go, people did not care. They chanted boring. They chanted, this is awful. Beach ball mania returned. There were beach balls bouncing around all over the place. So anytime during the match where you heard random booing or cheering, it was from the beach balls, either being confiscated or a new one popping up. Some people tried to start a wave. It didn't work because you got 75,000 people, so you're not going to start a wave. People didn't care. And this was your WrestleMania main event. It was embarrassing. It really was, to be sitting there and to see all of this happening and to see Roman Reigns kick out of that first F5 and kick out of the second F5 and kick out of the third F5 and the fourth and the fifth. Finally, I think it was the sixth one that finished him off. But to see him kick out of this move after a year where they had Brock Lesnar beat people like Samoa Joe and Braun Strowman, and even Roman Reigns at SummerSlam, but Strowman and Joe in particular, AJ Styles at Survivor Series, they went out of their way to make sure that he only hit that move once. It was the one move that nobody could kick out of. And you knew why they were doing that. You knew they were waiting until WrestleMania so that Roman would get the big reaction when he finally does what nobody else could do, and he kicks out of the F5. And not only did the people not care the first time he kicked out 4 or 5 more times, and it got no reaction at all. And, it was really sad to watch, because they spent so much time, I don't say tearing down other people. That's not entirely accurate, but, they spent so much time, trying to just convince people that this was going to be some kind of a big moment. And to hear the people just be completely indifferent to it, to see beach balls bouncing around all over the place and people, just chanting random things and chanting Rusev Day, is a colossal failure. It's just a failure on the part of Vince McMahon for what he's been trying to do for the last year. Everything built to this moment, and it was a total abject failure. They had Roman busted open. He got busted open hard way by those forearms and elbows from Lesnar. He was bloodied up pretty good, and it's not something we see very often where a guy's entire face is just covered in blood. I don't know if they were going for the Austin moment from WrestleMania 13. Obviously, they were trying to get sympathy on Roman. If that's what they were trying to do, again, it failed. It did not work. Roman hit a whole bunch of spears. Lesnar then hit one final F5 and got the pin. Everybody was stunned. I think you got this great reaction at the end because people were just happy, A, that the match was over, and B, that Roman didn't win. But this was almost, I would say that this was almost as shocking as the streak ending in 2014. Not quite, but this was also, one of those things where I don't know if they called an audible the day of. I don't know if they just worked everybody. My guess is they probably just worked everybody into thinking that Brock was leaving and this was his last match. I've never been more happy to be wrong. I thought that this was actually a really clever finish on their part. I thought that it sets things up for Raw tonight in a very interesting way because we don't know what's going to happen. We especially don't know what's going to happen now because there's been a story reported, and I wasn't even going to talk about it, but I see Ryan Satin now is reporting or confirming with different sources of his that there was a real-life confrontation backstage after the show last night between Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon. Brock was pissed about something. He came through the curtain. He had words with Vince. He may have thrown his belt either at him or at a wall, and he walked off. There's some talk that Brock may have gone off script a little bit near the end of the match, and Vince apparently was livid. Vince McMahon supposedly was absolutely livid during the match, and he wasn't happy, and Brock wasn't happy. If I had a guess, if this is all legit on the up and up, I could see Brock being upset about the crowd reaction, people not caring, people, bouncing beach balls around. He probably wasn't very happy about that. But other than that, I don't know what that could be about. I don't know what that's about. Or maybe this is all just part of the work, right? We'll find out tonight. But I thought that adds an interesting little wrinkle to things here because I don't see how either one of those guys honestly could be happy with the crowd reaction to the match. I wouldn't put it on the same level necessarily as WrestleMania 20. I think that was more of a disaster. You're also in a 20,000 seat building. So, when people crap on the match, it's a lot less, it's more spread out when you're in a big dome or a stadium like this instead of having, the entire building, in unison chanting something. But, having been in the building last night, I could just tell you that people were doing everything they could to crap all over the match. I thought it was really sad. And I could totally understand both guys being disappointed, but this is on WWE. They had to know that putting that match on in the final spot, that something like this would happen. And if they didn't, then they're morons. Because a blind man could have seen what was going to happen here. And exactly what everybody thought would happen is what happened. They turned on the match. WWE decided to swerve everybody. And now we see where Brock goes from here. Is he really on the outs with WWE? Is he really pissed at Vince McMahon? Is it all just, part of the story? Is he going to show up tonight and have Roman challenge him again? Or maybe Roman will beat him for the championship tonight on TV? Is Bobby Lashley going to debut maybe and challenge Brock Lesnar for the championship? Is Samoa Joe going to come out and challenge Lesnar for the championship? Because Joe is ready to rock. Joe's ready to come back. He was rumored to be first in line for a title shot coming out of WrestleMania. I think what would be great would be to have Samoa Joe come out on TV tonight and have him lay down some kind of a challenge to Brock. And even if it takes the entire show, but he has to convince Brock to do something he's never done before since he came back in 2012, which is wrestle a match on free television. And Lesnar gets all cocky. He accepts the challenge. They have an impromptu match. And he beats Reigns, or he beats Lesnar tonight on TV to become the new Universal Champion. That would make a statement. That would bring back Joe in a very forceful, dominant way, put him in pole position to be the top guy in the brand, feud with Roman or whoever. That, to me, is what I would like to see happen. But this is all predicated on whether or not Brock is coming back. We still don't know. Maybe they got Dana White in on the whole thing. And Dana White was there last night, by the way. They showed him on screen. He was there to root on Ronda Rousey. But he's been in the news.